Thanks for tuning in to the Women's Vibrancy Code, a podcast dedicated to helping women move from exhausted to energized, balance their hormones, and feeling turned on by their life, their lover, and themselves. I'm your host, Maraya Brown. I'm a Yale and functional medicine trained women's health expert, midwife, mom, keynote speaker, and self-made entrepreneur. I'm the founder of my signature program, the Women's Vibrancy Code. So sit back, relax, and let's chat about your energy, hormones, libido, and embracing your feminine power. Oh, and you might want to have pen and paper to take some notes on some of these episodes. Okay, so for those of you that don't know Eva is, so within the Women's Vibrancy Code, we have a number of master coaches that facilitate group call. Some of them maybe have one-on-one time. Eva is one of them. She is an acclaimed sexologist. She also historically is a psychotherapist, and she taught neuroscience in the UCLA system. So when I bring in master coaches, it is really important to me that they are vetted, that they are credentialed, that they have a track record, and they also just have experience with people. They could go a little bit on the woo-woo world and really just be with women. So Eva, anything else you want to say about who you are and the work that you do?
I just love to empower women and couples in living the most pleasurable life possible in and out of the bedroom. My approach is somatic and trauma informed. I think that's really important to name and important skills to have today when it comes to the conversation around sex.
And when you say somatic and trauma informed, what does that mean to you? I'm grabbing paper so I can write it down.
Yeah. So by training, I'm a somatic psychotherapist, meaning soma is of the body. So in somatic psychotherapy, we come from a slightly different orientation that's less about talking about the wound or talking about the problem, and it's more about re-entraining the nervous system and expanding the capacity and resiliency of the nervous system for life, to try to titrate against life stressors. And so, especially when we talk about sex and sexual pleasure, it's such a neurological event. Most people think that sex happens in the genitals. Sex actually happens in your brain. And anytime we're talking about increasing sexual pleasure or resolving trauma, we have to look at this additionally from the perspective of the brain and the nervous system.
It's beautiful. And I think when I hear feedback from all the women when they have attended a group call that you facilitate, I hear that. I hear that they feel like their nervous system just like calms down and they're able to really receive. You facilitating topics that many aren't accustomed to talking about and sometimes feel uncomfortable and sometimes feel taboo and sometimes there's old trauma around it. And so I love the container that you hold, and to know that you have the didactic education and background, but it's more around how you allow people to feel, both couples work and one-on-one, because some of the VIP clients have done couples work with you.
Yeah. Such a privilege.
Yeah. And you do couples work outside of Women's Vibrancy Code.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So for the woman who's listening and she has a full life, okay, maybe she's the CEO of a business. Maybe she has young children and her relationship feels very transactional, like we're passing in the night. I'm wondering if you have any snippets or words of wisdom for whether a woman is single or coupled. How do we start by rearranging and shifting the priority in regard to our sensuality and our passion?
Such a great question and such an important question. And you and I recently have been talking about this, about the importance of mindset. And for a lot of women and a lot of couples, the erotic life is kind of last on the list. It's not as important as the daily tasks or getting the kids to school on time or going to work and earning a living, that it kind of falls down in the list of priorities. And I'm here to say it's really important to keep that at the top of your list, because your erotic life, meaning your relationship to your body, and meaning eros is literally your life force. It is your vitality. So when I talk about your erotic life, I don't just mean your sexual life. I mean your relationship to life itself. And we know that sensuality, sexuality, sexual pleasure, orgasm, turn on is a really important driver and engine for your life force.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever is happening in your body, and I know you were just talking about these labs, that you look at with women, and I've had all these labs too. Like, we can get a picture of a woman's biological function, but all of those labs are a reflection of her life force and her vitality.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a parallel relationship here between how a woman looks on paper, how her biological systems are functioning, and how she prioritizes her pleasure. And your pleasure is a guide. It's your GPS. It's your navigation as to what is going to be healthy for you. And I don't mean pleasure in the sense of a dopamine spike, hedonistic indulgence, like eating a pint of ice cream or binging on Netflix. I don't mean pleasure like that. I mean, when we really start to relate to pleasure as our teacher, your pleasure will be your guide, meaning what feels wholesome, integrated, good for you, good for the planet, good for your family, and really learning how to discern that. The same is true for your sexuality. Your libido, your turn on, your desire, they're all indicator lights on the dashboard of your body. And if something is not in flow, if something isn't empowered in your sexual life, that's an indicator that there may probably, very likely, be a breakdown somewhere else in your system, whether that system be your body or your psyche. So we definitely don't want to leave that out of the conversation.
Yeah. And I realize I mentioned single and coupled, and I didn't mention polyamorous. So I don't mean to exclude. I mean, there's lots of ways that we can color outside the lines and be in relationship and outside of relationship. So for the woman who's listening and she's like, yeah, I actually have a lot of pleasure. I actually feel like I have a lot of eros from the perspective of my libido. It's actually pretty solid. And yesterday I touched briefly on erotic blueprint. So I'm curious if you want to talk through the lens of erotic blueprint or something different. For the woman who's wanting an up level, she wants to feel really turned on, even more turned on by her life and herself and her work. And if she has a lover or multiple lovers, turned on by that. What piece of advice or what words of wisdom do you have there?
Great. Well, we can jam on erotic blueprints. I think that's so helpful to know your erotic blueprint. So basically, there are 5 erotic blueprints, kind of like the love languages. And the 5 erotic blueprints are sensual, sexual, kinky, shapeshifter, and energetic. Mm-hmm. And most people have one dominant blueprint and then maybe a secondary, maybe even a third. So there's like a ranking, just like the love languages. And when you know your erotic blueprint, you can really play and empower with that. So for example, if you're sensual, you want to break out all the yummy sensual things that feel good on your body.
I'm sensual.
You're sensual. Great. So you want to have like the super cushy bathrobe, and you want to have things that feel good on your body and aromas and your essential oils next to your desk. I have that. And to be feeding yourself on the channels that you need to be fed. And this is really useful when you have a sexual partner to actually know their erotic blueprint and for them to know yours, because you're basically getting a manual. You're getting a guide as to what pleases your partner and what you need in order to be pleased. And now when I work with couples, whether you're a couple, you're dating, you have lovers, if you have a sexual partner, we really can empower when we begin to attune to how we need to be approached, how we need to be touched, what words we need to hear, how we need to be flirted with. I'm constantly teaching the art of flirtation because it's so important in our erotic life. We need to keep flirting. Even if you've been in a long-term relationship or you're married for many years with children, you need to keep flirting with your partner because it stokes the fire of your erotic connection together. You're building anticipation and you're building praise and adoration inside of your relationship.
And I love the idea of not only utilizing flirtation, but utilizing flirtation through the lens of erotic blueprint, just like we would use the love language.
Exactly.
If my love language is gifts and his is quality time, and I'm just perpetually every day bringing presents home and I'm seeing it as flirtation, it's not received in the same way that as we understand our erotic blueprint, we can utilize it in the same lens.
Exactly. So I definitely teach in the program how to flirt to your blueprint and to your partner's blueprint. We learn actually all the blueprints and how to flirt with them differently. Like how you flirt with a kinky person is totally different than how you'd flirt with an energetic person.
Totally.
Totally different.
My husband's energetic. It was like, oh my gosh, that explains so much.
Yeah.
Eva, anything else that you want to say? I'm just so grateful for you. We've known each other for years now. And I mean, I interviewed you in Beyond the Red Tent when it first started, and it's been so lovely. You've been a master coach within the Women's Vibrancy Code for a good, I don't know, year and a half, 2 years, something like that.
Yeah, I think it's been a couple of years. And I think what I want to say is just, about the Women's Vibrancy Code and your programming, Maraya, how important it is that we have spaces where women gather to talk about sex. And in a space that's not necessarily with your girlfriends or your family, where there's a different level of safety and expertise in holding that container. There was a really interesting study that came out about 5 years ago. This came out of Berkeley, where they put women together who were, let's say, anorgasmic, meaning that they weren't having orgasms, that had vaginal pain during intercourse, that had low libido, and all these other kinds of like Western defined sexual dysfunction. And there were no interventions whatsoever in the groups. They just put them in the same room and got them talking about sex. And what they noticed is that every single woman improved.
Wow.
Because we're breaking the spell. We're taking the gag out of our mouth around what real sexuality is. And when we talk about it, we dispel the myths, we dispel the shame that often comes around sexuality. We're making it the new normal to talk frankly about our bodies and sex in this way. So I appreciate that you allow me to hold those containers for women to bring their real questions. I mean, things like, how do I give a great blowjob? How do I give a hand job? What should I do? I don't always orgasm. Why? I want to learn how to have a vaginal orgasm, a cervical orgasm. I want to learn how to have orgasms all over my body, which is something I teach with Tantra. You can have an orgasm from any place on your body. So how do we do that? So we talk about both the mundane, the everyday kind of questions that come up around sex, and also a lot of the esoteric around sexuality.
Yes. And for those of you that end up applying and are accepted into the Women's Vibrancy Code, you then have access to the entire portal with every recorded call since April of 2020. And so there has been so much amazing content in these calls with Eva, and I know that you'll love them. So Eva, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. It's always a pleasure, Maraya.
Christie, you've been on this whole call. How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Great. How's your rest and hiatus?
Oh, it's wonderful. I love it.
I'm so proud of you. Christie is doing a phenomenal job at allowing her cup to get filled up.
Yeah. Yeah. I highly recommend it to everyone.
So I really, really, really honor your time here for sure. I'm curious if we can just so for those of you that don't know, Christie is the co-founder of REST. REST stands for Rapid Reprogramming Emotional Stress Technique. We'll talk a little bit about it. And so for the women that come into the Women's Vibrancy Code, as well as my VIP clients, the VIP clients, they get one-on-one rest sessions with Christie. And it's not just that she's an advanced practitioner, but she is the co-founder. And so my first question, Christie, and then we'll also ask you what is rest, but how can past trauma influence a woman's energy, sleep, stress, boundary setting, stories of worthiness? What role does past trauma play in that?
It literally is playing the role in everything that you do. Like anything that you're stressed over, you think that you're stressed over something. Like everyone has stress. Like, and first, let's just say stress is an awareness mechanism to say that there's something out of balance, right? So I'm not saying that stress is bad. I'm saying that if we don't handle our stress in the correct way, it's going to throw you completely off. So whatever you are stressed about right now, think about it and think about what you think the reason is. Well, what we believe is that, and I love being able to be teed up right after Eva, because it goes back to like, what happened to you? What's stored in your body and your brain over what happened to you a long time ago that you probably don't remember, but your body still remembers it, right? Your brain still remembers it. It's just like, we can't even remember what we wore yesterday. Like, how can we remember every single thing that has triggered us? So what rest we're able to do is we're able to look back at what happened to you and kind of do like a gardening of the mind to just kind of move that out of the way and leave this new, fresh, fertile place to plant a new seed and watch what happens and how you handle your stress. And you know, you're always going to have stress. I don't want to say, you know, you come work with us, you're never going to have stress again, but you're going to be able to be more aware of it. You're probably going to be able to respond in a much better way. And just having that awareness is huge. And to just also have some dang grace for yourself to realize that it's not about what is wrong with you, because there's nothing wrong with you. It's about what happened to you. Yeah.
And I love that with rest, it might not even be a traumatic moment that you remember. I mean, I remember I had a rest session and it was something when I was 2 weeks old at my grandparents' house, the way that my grandmother handed me to my grandfather because she needed to go into the kitchen. Now, I didn't find that memory. It was either with you or it was with Mitra Ray. I don't remember for that rest session, but the rest practitioner found that using kinesiology, and I'll let you describe that piece.
Yeah.
And that little moment created a pattern. It created a pattern for me. It showed up in my relationship and my marriage. If my husband was late, I would like freak out. I don't know. And
that one was, now I remember. I'm like,
you remember that? Yeah. I was like,
yes.
Why is this such a big deal? And we found we go back to that initial moment, that initial memory that maybe isn't even in our conscious mind traumatic. And yet I think of scissors, you just snip and then poof. So what is rest? How do you describe this?
I mean, okay, so it's kind of like what you just said. A lot of times with meditations, I'll do the snipping because it's the energetic strands. You know, the woo-woo side is we're all connected, right? So sometimes we're connected by old memories that we don't realize. We're connected by love and connection. And sometimes we need to snip some things away. And that's what rest is. So the sciencey part is it's 2 R's. So it's spelled RREST. And it stands for rapid reprogramming of emotional stress technique. And basically it's a way to say, we can get to your stress pretty quick and we can help to remove it. It may not happen in one session. For me, it did. For me, it happened very quickly. It was so profound. I was like, you can't be the only person who knows how to do this. You need to teach me. I said to the creator. And, you know, that's kind of what's been really fascinating. I'm jumping ahead here, but I think it fits. Is then when I work with the women from the Women's Vibrancy Code, the changes happen faster than some of my clients who are outside of the Women's Vibrancy Code. And I think that's because they have committed, they're hungry for change, and they're putting their ego aside, you know, to really focus in on what they need. You know, I love listening to Kathleen. This woman is making bank. You know, and she's doing it by making a huge impact. I love how she has, you know, all of her staff take Fridays off for self-care, but she still says, I have work to do on me. And when women who are making big changes in the world still recognize that they still have work to do on themselves, the shifts are just profound. It's just amazing to see. You know, I never know what's going to happen when someone comes into a rest session. I don't know anything, but I follow your stress using biofeedback. You can feel it. It's a way, like when you think about if you were to walk into a room, everybody has an energetic room. For a moment, everybody just, if you want to play, close your eyes for a moment and think about what it would feel like if you were an outsider coming into your own home. You can almost imagine like the front door and what it feels like to come into the front door, and just take a moment and notice, tune in to what is that energy. And maybe it's easier for you to do that if you tune in going into someone else's house, but every single one of you feels that energy. We just train our coaches to harness in on that and just chase the stress. We're following your stress. We're not Miss Cleo. We're not psychic. I mean, people have psychic abilities, but specifically, we're focusing on your stress and how we can find out what happened to you and not spend a lot of time on what happened to you, because the past doesn't matter. It's what's happening to you right now that matters most, because when you get into the right mindset in this space of more clarity and less stress in the moment, your future is like waiting for you.
Mm-hmm. The other thing, so I love that you highlighted that women's experience doing rest sessions with you when they're in the Women's Vibrancy Code does happen more quickly. And you're an alumni of the Women's Vibrancy Code, so you know it from the inside.
Yeah.
You've played concierge support, and I'm still in conversation with Christie, like, Christie, come on, come to mama.
Come to mama. God, I love you.
And for now, you are here to offer rest sessions. And so for those of you listening, I know it seems really abstract.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine a mixture of acupressure and muscle testing and Reiki and EMDR
and meridians, breathwork and meridians and chakras. Oh my.
Yeah. All of it mixed into one virtual hour-long session that's one-on-one.
Yep.
I cover the cost for you as long as you're in Women's Vibrancy Code or a VIP client. And now you get to allow the transformation to be profound. And I think of it, the word aka is a Hawaiian word. It's like the web. The web that connects us to all people and things past, present, and future. Mm-hmm. And when we make that snip from that event that has created a traumatic pattern in our bodies or in our psyche or how we think, when that snip is made, it literally transforms the whole web. And so it changes past, present, and future, not just in our own experience, but with those that we are in relationships with. And the stories are insane. We don't have time for them today because I want to make sure I also honor Katie's time. Christie, anything else that you want to add?
I cannot speak enough to every single one of you who, if you're on this call, you're probably a high performing woman who has probably neglected your needs. And I'm just saying, as one of those women, just like, please take care of yourself sooner than later and recognize that you can't do it all. And being able to lean on support to help people accelerate through this process while slowing down is a gift. And I wish that we could clone you, Maraya Brown, and give you to everyone, because there's not enough space for you to serve everyone. But if you're in this room and you have an opportunity to do it, do whatever you got to do to take time for yourself sooner than later.
Yeah. Thank you, Christie. And I love you and I honor you. And I'm so grateful to be, we've been working together for.
We've got some years under our belt.
4 or 5 years. I don't even know. Yeah. I have a lot of respect for Christie. And anyone who has a chance to work with her, you're also blessed. Hi.
Hello.
Thank you for your patience.
Of course.
Hopefully that was fun for you. I think you got a little bit of Kathleen and you got to hear Eva and you got to see Christie.
Yeah. I was like, the game's all here.
Yeah. And we all get to be reminded of all of the different master coaches and the ways in which we hold the container for these women. It's like, oh, right, they're getting that too. And they're getting that too. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm not going to read your official bio. I just want to kind of share what I know about you and how amazing you are. So Katie is a nutritionist dietitian. Yes. Master's trained. And she is spectacular. I interviewed a lot of possible nutritionists or dietitians to bring them in. And nobody was the right fit until I found Katie. And then she and I vetted for one another for a good 3 months. Like, what would you do? What do you think about this? What do you think about this? Because, you know, it's like everyone's like, got to be paleo, you got to be keto, you got to do intermittent fasting, blah, 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 and the noise. And we had to make sure that we were on the same page. And so when I'm having a call with a woman and she's not there, and she's having a call with a woman and I'm not there, that our story and our advice and the way we advise women is consistent.
Yeah.
So she also is an expert in gut health, and she trains other healthcare providers, other nutritionists, other dietitians. She's being flown all over the world to be a trainer and keynote speaker. She's good at what she does. Anything else? What else can I add? She's published. What else?
Like, I don't even know. I'm the worst at talking about myself. So I'm like, go Maraya.
She's awesome. The other thing, just in full disclosure, I am not a super detail oriented person. I don't particularly like to get into the nitty gritty so much. I like more broad stroke. And I acknowledged that for the women in the Women's Vibrancy Code, some of them were really desiring that. And so Katie can come in and also offer some specificity. And sometimes she brings in a resource, like, here's a resource guide if you're going to decide to go gluten-free, and how to shop and how to read labels. And here are some recipes. I'm like, yeah, awesome. I would never be the one to make that. So Katie comes in to add to the whole experience. Okay. So Katie, can you talk a little bit about gut health?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Like, what is gut health influence, and why do we look at a GI map specifically?
Yeah.
What can it tell
why
us?
do we care? why do we care what's going on in there?
Yeah.
And so our gut, or our digestive tract, it is the one of the major points of detoxification in our bodies. So as we're trying to get our energy back, as we're trying to support our hormones, and as our body does its natural processes, we have to have a spot for our body to kind of go like, detox out, exit out that system. And so what our gut environment can influence is so many different things. It does have a connection with our brain. We have a gut-brain axis, so it can affect mood. And most of our happy hormone, or serotonin, is actually made within our gut environment. So that mood is definitely affected. It also communicates with our hormones, and kind of has a kind of breakdown effect, or the last point of breakdown for especially estrogen. So as we're looking at that kind of environment and how our different hormones communicate, we take a look at that gut too. And I also always find it interesting as well that it influences how our body works cellularly. So how it takes up like sugar from our blood and how it uses it. And so all of these other kind of interesting background, behind the scenes processes that can influence how we feel, fatigue wise, health wise, all of those things.
Yes. I love what you just said, because someone will say, well, I don't really, I've got gassiness, I've got bloating, I'm constipated, I have diarrhea, but some go, I don't think I have gut issues.
Yeah.
And we go, well, are you tired? Are your hormones off? Do you have brain fog? Do you not sleep? Is your libido off? Are you having struggling losing weight? I mean, I could go on. Do you have aches and pains in your bodies? Do you have stains, rashes? All of these things, we can go back to the gut. So why the GI map? I mean, we order the GI map test, and then we give women a very personalized kind of prescription, so to speak, of supplements that are specific to her Dutch and her GI map. Why the GI map, and what does that show you as you read it? Because listen, I'll be really honest. I go to Katie as the resource for the GI map. I study it. I'm still getting to know it. And yet this is important for everybody to hear. So listen up to this. Maybe you've had some tests done. Maybe you've had a Dutch test. Maybe you've had a GI map. Maybe you've had a thyroid test. It is striking to me how many times that old test comes to me, and it's supposedly a provider has seen it. My naturopath saw it, and they miss big red blinking lights. And so for me with the GI map, I still go to Katie. She is the expert within the team. specifically with the GI map. And then she and I are in constant collaboration and leaving each other Voxer messages. How about this? Here's what's going on. Okay. So why the GI map and what do you see from it?
So why the GI map? The GI map to me is the one that kind of shows everything. It is a terrain, a map, a terrain of that whole entire system. So it shows us what's happening with that kind of normal or your great or your most robust flora. It also shows, do we have imbalance? Do we have dysbiosis? Do we have something that starts looking like a leaky gut? And how then does that influence the background with all of that? And so by looking at that whole terrain and what I also look at is it's not just like this one thing does it all. It's a snowball effect. So usually like little bits happening over here and then that influences over there. And then that tells your body something else. Mm-hmm. And so we want to take a closer look at what all those actions are doing, and then also utilizing supplements, utilizing how you eat to really, really get the needle to move. So I'm always kind of diving in like, okay, this is what we're going to do. So we have something spelled out for that needle to move and for you to feel like your best self as soon as we can do it.
Right. Not just go get a random probiotic.
Yes. And in all honesty, I hardly ever utilize probiotics. And that sounds really weird coming from a gut health person. Mm-hmm. But I just am like, well, we want to utilize the thing that's going to be what is actually useful. Yeah. And not just kind of throwing something at it and going like, oh, I hope this helps.
Right. Right. Totally. And I love that both of us, we will generally always lead with food. So mm-hmm. find out what are foods that someone likes, doesn't like. Yeah. Does it feel restricting? Or the walls are caving, and I don't want you to ever be on a diet or some food plan that feels restricting. Okay. There's no weighing food. There's no diets here. This needs to become a lifestyle that feels sustainable mm-hmm. for the long run. Mm-hmm. And so start with food and then figure out, okay, where else can we bring in personalized supplementation that bolsters it and adds to it? Yeah. I look at supplements as like, I might use something temporarily or for some months because I'm just trying to help that food, or I'm just trying to help the needle move a little bit quicker. Yep. And then you're exactly right with food. I look at food as support. Like food is the fuel and the fire. So if we're thinking about it of like, what all the things do I have to take away? And there might be some things that'll be like, oh, okay, without this, we might support something better, certainly. But we also have to look in at what are we putting in to help support the system as a whole. Yeah. Right. What is it? Reduce, reinoculate. What is
it? Remove the 5 R's.
Yeah. What is it? It's the 4 or the 5 R's. Reduce, repair, remove, and reinoculate. Yeah. Mm-hmm. We're students.
I'm like, I remember my R's. I promise.
Yes. And I think sometimes, like you've heard a couple of the women share their testimonials, that the quantifiable data becomes a nice motivator. You know, I can think of one client, she was struggling, she was tired, she was like, I have a lot of body aches. I kept suggesting that she try on taking gluten out of her diet. And for her, it was just too much. But then once she met with Katie and they looked at the GI map, I was like, you know what? I actually have sensitivity to gluten. And then she came to me, she's like, okay, I'm ready. Let's talk about this. What is this going to look like? So it's not just here, you're going to take all these things out, but what are we going to replace? And is it a personalized thing? And we have data to support it. Okay. I'm aware of your time. It's 37 after. I have a massage in 20 minutes.
Great. Oh,
anything else you want to add?
I would just say that, definitely, I'm so glad that I got to see the other master coaches too, and this as well today. But I mean, this is such a robust program that you are just looking at whole person, whole picture. Mm-hmm. And the nice part is that all of us work with each other to really bring in kind of these master brains to go, how can you feel the best? How can you take the time to really just have some focus on you in such a full circle way instead of maybe just feeling like piecemeal.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
love that about this.
Yep. And we get to prioritize our health just as much as we prioritize the new TV and the new car and the travel and the business coaches. And I don't know, when you think about all the things that we invest in, are we also showing up as the CEO of our health and our longevity, as Kathleen says? And are we showing up as the CEO of our relationships so that we feel deeply rooted and connected? And there we are seeing ourselves. All right. Y'all are awesome. Ciao, ciao.